everybody. Welcome to the Agency Operator Podcast. Today I'm joined by Jessica Steele of Color More Line. How are you doing, Jessica?
Hi, how's it going?
Also, I'm really happy to have you here. I know you're a veteran, right? We're talking about what we learned after 20 years selling on Amazon. I haven't that long. Been on Amazon that long. 14 years. I feel like I'm veteran. So really excited to have this conversation. We both have seen a lot of changes in the space. So yeah, before we dive into the conversation, I'd love to hear a little bit about what got you into Amazon so many years ago. What was it like in those days?
Yeah. So I have four children, and I kind of started my Amazon journey when my second child. I was pregnant with my second child. I had worked for a big corporation. I was with them doing mergers and acquisitions, and I found some issues that needed to be resolved. And this company was pretty big, and they would have been considered a chronic violator with various like environmental rules and regulations. I presented it to my boss and kind of said, "Hey, you can go to jail for this,"
Mhm.
And instead of, when I presented, I'm like, "Hey, these are the things that we can do to solve this problem." Um, and instead of choosing behind door A, B, or C, a week later he demoted me, and I was at that time 5 months pregnant with my second child. Um, and for me, that was like really crushing because I was like, "Oh, I'm doing the right thing." I've always been someone who's like integrity and being honest and saying what you do and doing what you say is always like at the paramount of how I operate. And so was super angry, and I wanted to quit and apply for other jobs, but I was like, well, that'd be stupid. I'll get maternity leave. I can take my 6 weeks paid vacation. Hold off, just wait it through. And it's also like kind of odd showing up to a job interview back then 20 years ago visibly pregnant, right? So I got home and was angry, and I kind of, I don't know, it's like a nesting instinct took in. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when women
Mhm.
are pregnant, they like to like get their place all set up. It gets worse the farther into the pregnancy you get. And I had been a nuclear, my schooling was in nuclear engineering. And I was like, I don't need these books anymore. I'm going to put them up for sale on this little website. And it was Amazon. And in a weekend's time, I made $1,000 selling my old college textbooks. And a light bulb went off in my head like, what else can I sell? And back then, Amazon had pretty limited. It was kind of almost like bridging the gap. It was they were known as an online bookstore back then, and they were really just kind of at the forefront of adding third-party sellers. There was no apps, there was no gurus, there was no YouTube. Was basically in its infancy. So all I knew was that I put the ISBN number on the back of a book onto the website. I listed it for $1,000. I sold it, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And I basically spent the rest of that weekend like looking around my house, what other things I had not opened that had UPC codes on them, and I was putting them into Amazon and doing like fulfillment by merchant because there wasn't the infrastructure is not like it was now. And it was like I called it like my own virtual garage sale. I didn't have to put stuff out; it was always open. And I got to be really good friends with the post office, the people that worked at the post office. And from there, I would take at that point, only, I had one child. We would go to stores like TJ Maxx and Marshalls, and I would take notepads and I would write down UPC codes, and I'd write what it was and then how much it was selling for. And then I'd go back home, type it in, see what it was selling on Amazon. And then I'd go back to the store, be like, I'd have a buying list. Um, Very manually done. And from there, I would go and I would buy everything that there was a delta to I could make a margin on. And that rolled into me asking, okay, well, where does TJ Maxx and Marshalls get their products? And I started buying truckloads of inventory from the resale jobber sites. And I was purchasing a lot of home goods and shoes from like Bloomingdale's and Macy's and a few other places. And it was printing money. So I'd have my garage full of pallets of shoes. I'd open them up, figure out what they were, relist them on Amazon, I was buying them on pennies on the dollar because they were the prior year's inventory. It was all from liquidations. And I was making a lot of money. And then the gurus started showing up and the courses started showing up. And the first one that I saw was amazing.com. It used to be called, I think it was like an Amazon Money Machine. It's had a couple different names.
Yep.
I know now it's called amazing.com. But when that first came out, the videos, the YouTube ads, I think the redirects were like, at this point I was like 8 years selling. Learn how to sell on Amazon and, you know, make all this money. And I was like, well, I already know how to sell on Amazon. I don't need to take a course. Right. And so I passed up on, I think maybe ASM2. And then when ASM3 came around, they had a woman who actually has become a good friend. She was one of their testimonials, and she got on saying, like, I make $100,000 a month. I live in Bali and I never touch any inventory. And I live in New Hampshire, which in the United States is the very Northeast. And I think I saw this ad in like January. So I was in a
Cold.
Cold is an understatement. So if you've seen Breaking Bad, when Walter goes and he leaves New Mexico, he goes to New Hampshire and he lives in a cabin in the woods. That's not exactly where we live, but I mean, but that's what our winters are like. So I was watching these ads, and Kirsty was saying, I make $100,000 a month. I live in Bali and I never touch anything. And my entire garage is stacked with pallets, and I had it configured so I could put them in there, and I had a place to work. My kids, their friends, some of my girlfriends would help me organize pallets as they came through and ship them back out to Amazon. And I was like, I'm touching everything. If I stop putting listings up, then this stops. And at that point in time, Amazon was starting to restrict and putting like brand restrictions in for third-party sellers. So things like Ralph Lauren, Sperry Topsiders. I made so much money selling Sperry Topsiders. And it was basically stuff that just didn't sell at the end of the year. And I would get as a jobber, I would get all the weird sizes. Like I'd get the size 13 women's shoes, and people were like, oh, you're never going to sell that. But Amazon, people that wore those odd sizes loved it because they could always find what they wanted. And it might not be at the physical store where you go because it was hard to find it there, but online, that was like a concept that people were willing to pay top dollar to have that size or something that was discontinued. So back to the story. She's in Bali. She doesn't touch anything. And I'm like, oh, I touch everything. And I was watching a bunch of brands that I had sold and had made a consistent amount of money on each month basically that list was collapsing on who was allowing resellers to sell their products on Amazon. So I took their course, and the whole premise of that was like learning how to import and how to find products that we're going to sell, and then how to subsequently import them from China. And that was the part that I knew how to sell. I knew all the ins and outs of the Amazon system. PPC was coming online around that same time, about 8, 9, 10 years ago. Actually longer than that. That was probably like almost like 12 years ago, maybe 13. Mm-hmm. So PPC was coming online, and I had a really old account back then. Back then you can get daily payouts, not the really long two week or even longer now holds for the sold inventory. So that happened. I took the course, went through it. I was a little, I'm of the, if I don't know how to do something, I always try to find like a mentor or a coach to try to figure out and walk me through what I'm uncertain on. If I can't figure it out through YouTube, there's so many places now to go find information and really, determine how to do something. And so I took the course, and I went to their conference, and from there went to one of their masterminds. And while I was at their mastermind, there was about, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 people. I went there, I already had a team because I had read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And I was like, at that point in time, I had 4 children. I started with 2 when I got on Amazon, and I'm at 4. And I wanted to have leverage, and I wanted them to answer my customer service, and I wanted them to do all those types of things and help me with the listings when they got blocked. So I went, and people had all these questions, and I was able to answer all of them because I'd been on the space for so long. And at the end of the conference, someone was like, "Can I just hire you to fix these problems that I have with my listings?" I was like, "Sure, I would happily, do this because I know how to do it and I have a team." And then that kind of morphed into owning an agency, and then that's kind of where I've gone, because I like agency work because it's similar to like being a jobber, being liquidation kind of person. You're not in one particular category. You have a lot of exposure to a lot of different things. So if any one thing goes sideways, you have other streams. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So worked on building out a brand myself, and then helped other people that had their brands with the back end, the operation, and that's kind of where I really shined, because I had a lot of experience with just project management and setting goals and kind of working on just strategy for businesses and then implementing those strategies. So for the last almost 10 years, half of the journey has been as an agency owner. And I sold the majority of my agency shares a little over a year ago, and I'm doing a lot of advisory work now.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you still have that brand?
No. So the brand that I started then was in the solar light category, and that got eaten up by the last Trump tariffs from his first administration. So that was kind of, I put that aside, sold it, and then wound up just kind of really focusing on the agency. The agency work was so exciting because there was so many different categories and so many different, spaces to be in, and each category has its own kind of unique issues, but also opportunities too.
I love that story. I mean, it's such a natural process of evolution, right? And as you're going along, Amazon's getting more advanced and the market is changing around you. And so the demand is coming up where you wouldn't be an agency owner 20 years ago or 15 years ago, right? Really, that kind of demand really picked up about that 10-year or 12-year mark when people started getting involved, but they don't know, right? So there's these courses start to come up, and then and there was not that many companies out there, right? 10 years ago, you guys were like one of the, I don't want to say maybe only ones, but there was probably maybe 50 to 100 agencies max that focused on Amazon at that time, because that was really just like around the time of like PPC just started to kind of come around. And
yeah, you bring up a really good point. So like when I started 20 years ago, I literally could do everything because there wasn't that much functionality to Amazon. You could take, God is my witness, you could take a digital camera. I don't even think iPhones had cameras at that point. I think that came around like 16 or 17 years ago. You could take a digital camera, shoot a photo on a white background, like you got a piece of oak tag paper, shoot it, upload it, and you made money. There was no title optimizations. That really only happened about 15 years ago, when they started to infuse more of the SEO aspects of how to really, rank on Amazon, and ranking mattered. When I started, it was just the novelty of being able to buy online and then get something in less than a week's time. I grew up in, I don't know if you remember, if you're old enough, but like in the late 80s and into the 90s, there used to get like a Sears and Roebuck's catalog. And it's funny enough, that was like the one thing I saved from my childhood. it's this big, and it was their entire catalog. And it had everything from, soccer balls to, anything you'd have in your garage, through your sheets or your linens or your window features. And it was this was it. That was all the things you could buy. And it would take, you'd have to pay for shipping and handling. And it would take over a month sometimes for something to get to you, because it was like you'd call it in or you mail it in, and then they'd have to process it. And then, so the whole infrastructure has changed radically in the last, 20 years.
Do you remember the first thing you bought on Amazon by chance?
Oh no, I could probably look that up. Actually, I have to remember what was my original account. Because so when they did make the switch to offer PPC, like the hook to get off of the one-day reimbursements was you could not have PPC on those accounts. So they made you sign up a brand new account. So there's always something that they have to basically migrate you off of whatever version that they're on if they're not updating it any longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my first purchase was a shower radio. And
nice.
Funny enough, I think those things still sell, because
they probably do.
Maybe now, like you set up the Bluetooth, don't take your phone with you into the shower, and just let it go. But I also have a very similar type of story when it comes to books. I used to walk around the street and see, like, people do spring cleaning, and you live in a
Mhm.
neighborhood where, kids are going off to college, or doing new semesters or whatever, and everyone would just like stack their books outside their door. And so one time I saw a book I recognized, and I'm like, man, and I was in college at that time. Man, I just bought this book. I know that's like $100 book. So I took it
Yeah.
home. I scanned it. Oh yeah, sure enough, $100, right? Sold it. So I started walking around collecting all the books off the street, and just stacking it in the house, selling it. And they would do these fobs, like these little scanners.
Yes.
That
Those
probably
came out.
came
Yes.
later, right? Not in
Yes.
those
They
days
did
when
come
you were
later.
doing but
Yeah.
those were super useful because you had your phone connected, you had the scanner, you can find out if there's opportunity to make money right on the spot as you're in the store.
Yep.
So that was super cool. I started carrying around the fob with me, so that way I
Yeah.
don't end up carrying books back and forth that don't
That
actually.
you didn't need or they weren't going to
Yeah,
move. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah. So I had those days. Then eventually I moved into KDP and creating my own books and selling my own books. I didn't pursue it because it wasn't making enough money as much as I was hoping. But it's been like, I don't know, 8 years since I launched those books, and still every single month, a couple dollars driven to the account per book. So over time, it's kind of amazing how it really is like an evergreen type of
It
business.
it is. Yeah. I remember I went to Amazing Selling Machine, had a conference probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And Manny Coates at that point in time was still the owner of Helium 10.
Hmm.
And he got on and he was talking about Merch by Amazon, which was their print on demand for clothing. And I signed up on the spot and threw a couple designs up. And that's, I make a decent amount of money every month on that. And that's just mailbox money. So there are a lot of things. And I've put processes in place to have graphic designers upload for, and a VA upload for me, so that it's, you can have recurring income streams from Amazon that don't require the grind of owning Seller Central or running Seller Central. There's so many opportunities on the Amazon space.
There's huge appeal. I think now it's probably tough because of AI. You can do some
Yes.
things like with such scale and yeah, and magnitude, and just multiply that across multiple people, and probably you can hire bots to hire bots, and it gets crazy that way. So the opportunity is probably very slim for that type of thing.
Yeah, so actually, the whole merch platform, they totally changed their, like, I should have been up, tiered up, as they say. But they changed, I didn't get tiered down, so I'm still in the same tier, but they're basically moving more towards a model where only things that sell is what you get the tier for. So if you have things that are slow moving, they're basically incentivizing you to remove it and give that spot to something that you think is gonna move faster. Also, yeah,
I
for
see.
volume. Yeah, for turns.
And aside from that model, I mean, I think also like drop shipping to me seems like it's not really a model that's very easy anymore. Also very narrow opportunity. So like, people ask like, what's the best way to make money on Amazon these days? And I think that private label still is the best way. But with the caveat of like, you really have to be solving a problem. You can't just throw up a product anymore. Like you truly have to like study what people are complaining about on negative reviews and come up with a solution that's cost effective, quality effective, and gets good feedback in order to really have a chance. And then at that point, yeah, like have partners that can help you with the content, with the ads, with the operations, with the inventory, with the deals, with everything.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely like the straight up OEM model, like just go find a product on Alibaba, list it, and wish and a prayer on hoping that it's going to rank and produce significant results. That's gone. It's dead.
Yeah.
You do, I believe, have to, like you said, like look at the TikToks, look at the negative reviews for that existing product, and then make some tweaks, because if you are able to figure out a way to reverse engineer it, make it better, it's going to have a significant impact. And then there's also like the aspect of like connecting as a brand, as an owner, as with your audience, because people buy from people. They don't buy from brands. So if your personality is one that they're going to get behind you, and you talk about whatever the struggle was with the old version of the product on how it wasn't working for you, and it could be you, it could be a spokesperson too. And that goes a long way with connecting with people.
Yep. Yeah. And given the fact that you've been around for so long, what do you think is the next step here? So what do the next 10 years look like?
Yeah. Uh, there is a lot of, I mean, obviously everybody's talking about AI, but it's one thing to use like ChatGPT or Claude. Those are kind of coin operated for most people. They put a coin in, they get an answer spit out, and that's gonna it'll move the needle to some degree, but not at scale. There's some really interesting agentic things that are basically built from AI. Most of the stuff historically, I'll use my example, right? I went from post-it notes to putting it on an Excel spreadsheet, and now there's apps for that. And then imagine that doesn't even exist. Imagine that the entire process is built on AI. That's where we're going, and there's certain brands that are starting to uh, delve into that, and that's this like you said, the scale of being able to do something like that is pretty wild. At the agency that I just sold, we would do these strategic business reviews, and we do them twice a year. And it would be a deep dive into the state of the business. What's their inventory like? What are the marketing things that we want to do to help them move the needle, and where are they ranked for their top couple keywords for their hero products and then their second tier products, and then if we had the time, we would do it for even the tertiary products. And it was so labor intensive. Like, this is a person's job. They would do overtime to basically get all these reports and pull all these things from, there's never one tool, right? They're all these different tools, and you got a sliver of information from all of those. And it would take us 6 months to pull these together. Now with these agentic AI models, they're combining all of those tools, and they can run those daily or even weekly. So then it's going to be, how do you implement it, and how do you implement the right things to move the needle for them? So I think that's going to be really, really key in this next phase. Like, you can have all this information, but what are you doing with it? Some of it can be done or solved with AI, but some of it actually still needs people. It still needs people to buy in, figure out what the plan is, implement that strategy, and then monitor it and see what it looks like for success after it's implemented. So, yeah.
So that's on the seller side. What do you think Amazon is going to do to kind of meet that? Because they're also implementing their own AI systems. So that's what I've been trying to figure out, is like, what's the move from Amazon? Almost like kind of playing chess ahead of time, like based on what they're planning to do and what they're already rolling out. Like, what are the next steps, so then we can be prepared as sellers and as service providers?
So I think Amazon, as an agency, like as an agency owner and having worked with a lot of brands, Amazon's always trying to get brands in their platform, but they're not very good at implementation. They're actually pretty awful. Like, if you've ever hired them to do your DSP, they
suck.
If you hire them to do your A+ content, it sucks.
Yeah.
And so keeping that in the back of your mind, you have to also layer in what's regulatorily happening with them. And in my mind, they have all those FCC violations that's still looming. It hasn't been resolved. So they suck at implementation, and then they have a lot of potential, legal issues, or what was it, like back in the 1800s, like the robber barons, because they've created this massive entity, and everything runs through it. So they have to be careful of, I think, the service portion of it, and the actual, they can't and they won't guarantee results. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for brands because of that. They don't know what they're doing. They know how to sell it, but they don't know how to deliver.
I agree. If you've ever tried any of their pilots, all the time, they
forget
suck.
it. Yeah. And a lot of times it's like they did their exclusives, and that was basically Elena Saras used to call it her mafia money. Like, you have to pay the mafia for them to protect you, but then that's all you get. You just get protection, but they don't actually help you with sales. They don't help you with anything significant towards your bottom line, besides and that's not to say there's not value there. There's value with not having hijackers. There's value with not having copycats and your intellectual property being honored. But they're not doing anything to move the needle for your sales or your conversion.
They're not always incentivized, and it's funny because you'd have SAS core program. And so the maximum that you'd end up paying them, I think, is $5,000 a month or something, right? So I had a client, paying that based on our recommendations because they had many cases open that we couldn't get resolved, and SAS Core had escalations. And so I was like, we're literally just using SAS Core for escalations. So the client brought up a really great point, which is like, so we're paying Amazon to do the job that they should be doing, extra money, right?
Yes.
On top of the fees. And in a way, it's like, that's what it is. It's become such a large thing that they now have to hire their own dedicated reps to take care of people who
care
are
of their
more
problems
important.
within their own.
Yes. Yeah.
So in the last couple, like the last year, I've seen a lot of they're partnering more with agencies and giving agencies more API access just for that exact reason. Like they want you to be able to help your brands that are in your portfolio at scale quicker because, like you just said, they suck at it. Or, I mean, there are definitely some cases where you have to find that specialized niche person that can solve whatever the upload is. But a lot of the guys that are there behind the Seller Central machine, they don't know what they're doing. I don't think their training is very good. And if you find someone that's really solid, you're like, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. Like you can.
Yeah, you're going to promote them and you're going to, exactly. That's what I've seen is just lack of experience, or like some of these SAS Core guys, or even the people who are like the managers that they assign to run these accounts. Like you would say, let Amazon run your DSP. It's going to be bad. Let Amazon run your campaigns. It's going to be bad. And the reason why is because they don't have experience, and they're
putting a super junior. They're putting a super duper junior person. So like the expression that I've used is you're sold by the A team and you're delivered by the C or maybe even D team. They
Absolutely.
don't. They have a little bit over the advanced Amazon internal training, and that's okay, but it's not robust. Like I wouldn't build a business on it, if you know what I mean. And so you have to really go out and seek and build those relationships with people that know what they're doing, and then build your own core team or have an agency build that team out for you. Because, to answer your original question, what do you think Amazon's doing? I think that they're going to lean more into agencies, to be honest with you, because it's exactly like you said, it's outsourcing the fundamentals that they can't do on running their own. There's so many layers to it. So like if you have an agency, they can go in and be like, I need to go exactly here to fix this exact problem. This is the medicine they need. This is the cure, this is going to solve it, and as quickly as possible. And then if they can offload that to people that are competent on the agency side, that's I think where they're going to have more satisfied and successful brands and brand partnerships.
Yeah. Well, because currently, what do they get? Hey, I have this problem. All right, let me run a report. So they go to like somebody internally in India. They spit out a report. They pass it to the manager. The manager presents it. The client is like, okay, but this doesn't solve my problem. Okay, let me go back. And so it's like this back and forth, and then they escalate it to some other team. So there's all these, like you said, there's all these layers that don't actually get to the heart of the problem. Whereas agencies as third parties are incentivized to just get straight to it. There's no BS. There's no like bureaucracy and layers of process that you have to go through.
Get it online. Yes.
That's it. Let's just get it back. Like no fillers. And I actually had a situation where the SAS Core guy would just tell us all these things. And we were just like, is this guy like not hearing us? Like, what's going on here? And he actually called us on a private line and said, hey, you're totally right. Totally understand what you guys want, what you're looking for. There's just certain things I can and cannot say on these calls because they're all recorded and they use AI to process what I'm doing and what I'm saying. So he's under a huge microscope. So he feels pressure to do things that Amazon says, not what we want. But that was good confirmation that we're not crazy. It's just that's just the way it works.
It is.
Yeah, Jessica, I really love this conversation. I think there's definitely some great wisdom here. What's the best way to reach out to you for some of your consulting, or maybe color more lines if agency services needed?
So you can reach out to me at jessica@colormorelines.com, or just my own personal email is jmsteele777@gmail.com.
Cool. Awesome. Check her out, everybody. Jessica, thanks again.
My pleasure.
Catch you on the next one.
All right. Take care.